these are our future, so we have to help impact them first.
Our generation can really make a difference in all of this.
I feel like we've actually made something that can be possible and change our community.
I feel like my first step going to college was the first step of becoming something.
It kind of connects to what I want to do in the future.
It kind of feels like I reached like a new level in the video game, you know, a new level in my life.
I'm very proud of myself. I feel so much more confident than I did the first day.
Kind of feels nice to know that my opinion matters on something that could impact the campus in a good way.
I want to make a big impact. I want to make a really big impact, especially in my community.
REP4 is a bit of a complex construct. You know, it is really the elevation of student voice. It's the elevation of a sense of inner control. Since the 1960s, students have been feeling that the external environment controls them more than their own internal environment. So we've examined a lot of factors around college success, right? We've examined factors around income levels, zip codes, preparation, scores. We have not examined closely enough that sense of control. So this is a program that affects students on a very personal and individual level, and then affects institutions as they transform on a systemic level. We're a group of public institutions. We all believe very deeply that we operate in the public good. So a part of this alliance is also the sharing of everything we learn. We don't keep anything proprietary to accelerate our innovation with one another and to accelerate innovation as it relates to others who maybe could learn from the work or join the work in a particular way. So the theory of change is that REP4 sits at the center and works with the student both to empower them in their own educational process, as well as to use what they produce to make changes in the institution. It's an asset-based model. Today, most of what we talk about when we see different levels of success for different groups of students is, what are the deficits? What do we need to do? How do we add to that educational process? Really, what we need to do is look at the assets. What are they bringing? What is their incredibly different lived experience? We represent over 200,000 learners as institutions, and we are wonderfully diverse. We have different missions, we have different mandates, we have different regions. And it is through that diversity that we're going to learn faster how innovation seeds, how it scales, how it can be supported. The model itself has 4 components. So what is it that we do? We bring students at the high school level and their community. It might be a community leader, it might be a high school counselor, it might be a high school teacher, in cohorts to our institution. We support them with types of active learning like design thinking that helps empower them in their own journey, and the work they do, the palette, if you will, they work on institutional change. That palette of innovation we showcase at a national summit. It's a virtual national summit, so everything the students produce in teams that improves education, we lift up and showcase. And then we as a set of institutions agree to be places of experimentation for the best of those ideas so that we can put them to work. And then our intention is to create a virtual platform, which I'll share with you more about as we go into the futures, that really is a place that other institutions can reach in and pull down some of the toolkits and learnings that we have had as an alliance. Every year since 2019, financial literacy has been on the minds of students. They're worried about the cost of college. They're worried about their understanding of how it all works financially. Perhaps they haven't had a lot of experience in budgeting. They don't know what the loans mean. They're signing their first lease, et cetera, et cetera. So you can go out and look at everything banks have produced, everything institutions have produced on financial literacy, and you will see a similar set: courses, programs, learning groups, how to budget, budgeting 101, what's loan. When we gave this to the students to produce, how would it resonate with a 16, 17, or 18-year-old? They produced in a virtual domain a set of tarot cards, which created personalities that they needed to be most aligned with. They needed to figure out what their money personality is. And they're continuing to build this out. Now I ask you, would I, at my age, think about that as the way to relate to students as they come in? The answer is no. I mean, they're going to create things that are much more relevant, that resonate, that evolve, that live on, that are in technological domains that they live in every moment of every day. So we are very early on in this journey. But if you believe in prototyping, which is a faster way to get to change, you have to believe that we have to evaluate our early successes and begin to move now. We can't wait till the first student who started with us as a sophomore 7 years or 8 years later graduates college before we deem success. But I think some of the most compelling are the student's own voice of how they feel ready after going through this program, or their own endorsement, which is almost double of when a student is asked, would you recommend this institution? Doesn't matter what institution, on a national average, would you recommend this institution for someone who's coming along behind you? If they've been through REP4, they recommend it at double the level. So they feel more ready, more equipped, more in control, and they've offered us incredible ideas for our own transformation.
What I want to do is to hand it over to the folks that we have in the panel. And what I'd love is if you could go into a little bit of depth on who are you, what is happening at your institution that's unique, and why is the model that you're launching with your students something that we all should be taking back. And that's what I hope we all leave with.
When President Mantella contacted me about REP4, what really excited me is it entirely shifts the focus. And I want to come back to something she said in her opening remarks, which is that I think I've got a lot of good ideas, but if I'm designing for people who are 17 or 18, I may miss things that would be absolutely transformative for them. And so I want them being a part of that design experience. I want them talking to us and thinking through and with us about how we can evolve higher education. And I'm very proud that this year, Boise State became a significant part of working with the new CHIPS and Science Act and partnering with Micron Corporation in doing semiconductor advancement in the semiconductor industry. And we signed, at the G7, we signed a partnership with 12 universities globally to advance the semiconductor industry. And what our REP4 summit this summer did is we had students ask the question, how do we get young people who are coming up from high school excited about and interested in things like the semiconductor industry? How do we change what they imagine as possible for their future? And one of our winning proposals from the students, one of these design changes that will be at the national convening this year, was an app that helped students find mentors in STEAM. so that they could, if they were interested, if they were excited, they could easily access someone who is in industry, who is in education, in those fields, so they could actually begin to imagine a future. And so we know that if we connect with students, it's going to change the way we see higher education. And if we become their partners instead of just the leaders who are accepting them to passively accept information, it changes what's possible for all of us.
Right. We need to change in higher education, as referenced before. Things are at a kind of precarious place in a variety of ways. And if we don't change, change will be foisted upon us. And I think that is something that we don't want to happen. So it'll help our value proposition. It will help our impact. It will help us argue for more resources as a state entity. And I think it really pushes us back to the roots of higher education, right? That place of discourse, that place of discovery, and ultimately that place of creativity, right? Knowledge creation and bringing things into the world that did not exist before. And that to me is so exciting. And for me as an immigrant, as a first-gen student myself, serving so many students that remind me of myself, that is really inspiring and to me as well. And I'm very passionate about that.
How many people in your state start but don't finish their higher education degree? And what does that mean for them? So I was in Virginia before. We knew we had about 1 million in Virginia that started higher education but stopped out. In California, you're probably more than 6 million. And so think about that. What does that mean for your state? I think the work of REP4 by engaging students with their voices, for them participating in their own learning, that is giving them a sense of belonging. That is making them want to stay, to be connected. That idea of being able to get a mentor right away, that's what keeps individuals in college.
When you have students that attend an HBCU, where 70% of the students are on financial aid, we sit in the middle of Georgia in a rural town. So when we bring students on campus, the issues that impact them are the issues that they live with every day. So when we ask them for student voice, 3 things came up over the past 3 years since REP4 has been on our campus. That is food insecurity, mental health, and financial literacy. So each year we have attacked one of those issues.
It's a moonshot, if you will. Let's change the entire higher education system so everybody finds a place in it, so that we're serving all the needs, and so that we are once again a beloved institution, which is not where we are right now. And so we don't worry about all of that. We can't get involved in that. What we worry about is how do we meet our mission? And our mission is met by bringing new ideas. And change always comes from innovation, from startups. If you think about the Silicon Valley, language, we are that kind of a startup, but we're a startup with big ideas. Every founder, by the way, thinks they're going to be the next unicorn and change the world. We believe that too. But we are at an inflection point. I think this digital transformation is significant. We haven't seen it, this kind of a transformation since the computers first came, to our fore about 40, 50 years ago. So this is real change, and that means that all the repetitive work, all the linear thinking is going to go away because AI can do a lot of that. And what we're going to need is creative thinking. And I think what we're empowering our learners to do, and this is why having voices from so many different perspectives is so critical, is to bring and to acknowledge their ability to be creative in this kind of a changing environment, to empower them to lead us into the future.
We had the opportunity to connect with the city council, and the city council for Fort Valley came to our 1-week seminar where students got to share their ideas of those 3 areas. These councilmen sat next to students, and they were amazed at the level of research that they had done on each one of those areas. We even did drive-by in the city to show them what food insecurity looked like. There are about 6 fast food restaurants, 1 grocery store, and young people have to go out of town to get the food that they need. So when the councilmen saw this, they really wanted to have their voice. So they invited us to the council meeting, and then the last day for the presentations, they came and they listened to the students, and they have made a commitment this year to work with our students. I can't think of a better way to think about change, equity, the learner, and this is what REP4 has done. They are going to, in working with the university, convert an old train and find ways for Black farmers in the community, because they have been at a loss in the community, and they're going to connect with Fort Valley and our students. So we're making a commitment with these students after the summer to continue the idea that came about from the summer. So we're really excited.
And I think the other thing that's really pivotal here is this partnership. The fact that we're working together and we're sharing these ideas across all of these institutions makes possible a kind of experimentation in different landscapes. One of the things at ASU that Michael Crow always says, you have to leverage place. Well, we are in very different institutions all across the country. And when we can experiment with something and see what works across our institutions, we're going to get an opportunity to scale in that way too.
Ultimately, I guess my ask would be of anyone in this room that has influence, when you support the work that comes from REP4, you're not supporting just now, you're not supporting an idea. I think you're really supporting that trajectory of change that is necessary for us to continue to evolve and serve our states, our communities, and the country at an even broader and more impactful way.
I will tell you, as the president of the university, I can go up and make a case on the data. But if student walks into the room and they are articulate about the needs, it is a stronger case because it is a lived experience case. So their voice is very powerful in the change paradigm, and REP4 again helps us with that.
Education is a national security issue, period. If we have an underdeveloped, undereducated population, then we are not going to be prepared for the challenges that we face as a nation. And we are looking at a global environment that is in flux, and we have to be ready. And our partnership with Micron was vital, not just to Boise State as a university, not just to Idaho's workforce, but to the United States of America, because we need institutions that are willing to step up and think about new ways to help people get access to that educational landscape. And what REP4 is doing in multiple ways is thinking about not just how do we revise what we're doing here so you learn better, but how do we make sure you get here? How do we make sure you engage? And how do we see people through to the other side so that we're preparing our nation for the future?
My connection to this project started the week of President Mantela's inauguration. She pulled together all these folks, and I got this email that's like, hey, can you come to this thing and bring a couple students? And we're like, okay. So, we show up, and she started asking this, she just pushed us. She kept pushing and pushing. She said, what does a transformational educational model look like? And kids got up and they stood, and all these leaders, business leaders and educational leaders, and it was like the 14-year-olds who stood up, and it gave everyone goosebumps. And that was really the start of this really important work of continuing to grow that idea of what does it look like to do that? What does it look like to shift the power dynamics that and place those that are most negatively impacted by historic power imbalances, and put them at the center of participatory social design.
In 2014, as much as we are busy doing those two lanes of work, the rate of change was just too slow. And what Deborah and I always do is to say, what more can we do? So we launched something called Presidents for Latino Student Success. And we're very pleased that President Mantela is a president for Latino Student Success, and that Terrence is such a believer in the cause that even though he is not a president of a campus, he is part of the network, and others that are part of this group are affiliated. What's the importance of that? Because at the front end, each of these leaders engage with me in a discussion about, so we have responsibility. When we look at national data about Latinos and we sit through a presentation about the disparity in performance, and we have the kind of discussion that you were talking about, security, the country's future, the country's economy. Well, the only way that as a country we will be strong is if our human capital is prepared. And when a significant proportion of America's human capital, the Latino community, is not fully engaged, is not prepared, then it is a wasted moment. I'll say it that way. It is an opportunity that should be met. And that conversation turns into, is this something you as a president want to work on? Yes. Then here's how we can work together.
As I was reading about and learning more about the REP4 Alliance, I think, two things that really stuck out and was like really, got me excited about it is, one is something AC President Ted Mitchell thought that when he heard about REP4 at the beginning of this movement around it, the flipping the model from the learners, simply giving feedback to learners making them designers of education is a really truly novel concept. And I think that aspect of it, it sounds very intuitive to think about it, but I think we sort of condition ourselves for a long time to consider post-secondary learners as consumers, but they don't need to be. And whether they're young or older, they can be owners of their own educational trajectory.
With the ultimate goal of creating a space where anyone entering a campus, whoever they are, however they access it, whenever they access it, can achieve success how they define it. And this process acknowledges that there's systemic barriers that exist, and it positions high school and undergraduate students at the center of this solution building. And that's fantastic and incredible and worth celebrating.
The question is, on your watch, on my watch, will Latino student success improve? And from everything that Deborah and I and our staff are learning about this innovation, and the fact that we already have made common cause with some of the institutions that are part of your consortium, suggests that after we get to know each other better, that what we can look at in a results-oriented way is, how do we deploy this synergy?
The diverse set of institutions that came together for this REP4. So I'm a higher education researcher by training, so I know a whole lot of different ways to group institutions into different buckets. Private versus public, for-profit versus not-for-profit, R1, R2, comprehensive, all that, community colleges, like all that kind of things. And we tend to think institutions in those conventionally known clusters or classification groups. And we think about the solutions around that. And so to your point around that, the question always is, so what other institutions doing? Like what's my peer institutions are doing is always a go-to way to bring people together in the conversation. But this idea that we can bring different types of institutions, conventionally understood, into sort of a similar mission around where we want to go or what we want to be, and that sort of alliance of communities of institutions can work. That's a really great thing to know, and there are more that I'd like to learn about it so that we can continue to replicate and scale this kind of set of institutions that are not bounded to, let's see what R1 can do, or let's see Master's Comprehensive can do, but more to do more on the side of this more the asset-based approach. Like, okay, this is where we want to go as the sector together. So that was the part that it really got me excited around it.
We didn't choose this moment, but we're ready for it. I think that from everything that I've learned in the very short time that I have looked at what you do, how you do it, why you do it, the purposes that you have, which is supporting students and letting students discover the means to come into institutions, to find the places that will support their academic interests and the application of their skills. That's exactly the kind of thing that, as we are talking about intentionally serving Latino students, and when an institution does that well, they acquire the skills, the backbone, the strength to serve all.
This is a great example of a community of institutions who really came together for once their similar mission and started to work across conventional norms of types of institutions. And this is the part that we can think about, both in terms of scaling this efforts so that more institutions can be part of, but also replicating this kind of groups in different solutions or the different challenges that we might be facing.
It's one of the presidents said, and I wrote it down, but I didn't get who said it, but it stuck with me. He said, we cannot teach the students that we had 15 years ago. We have to support the students that we have today and those that we will have in 15 years. Students are different. Families are different. Students are older. They're more diverse. They're bringing more history and life and experience, and our traditional institutions are not working for them broadly. This alliance of partners are asking themselves, their partners, staff, and students, both present and future, how can we make this place work for you, whomever you are, and however you're entering this space? Ubuntu, I am because you are. REP4 is saying we succeed when you succeed, and that's a worthy disruption.
I know that we are at a true crossroads here when it comes to higher education. The last few years has shown us that the state of play in higher education as we know it is dynamic, and we need leaders who are going to be ready and responsive to face the coming challenges. Each college and university president in this national alliance has affirmed their shared vision, and today's meeting provides an important opportunity to discuss the most pressing issues facing higher education and students who are faced with a variety of challenges ranging from low completion rates, lack of access, and persistent racial gaps in higher education. As a member of Congress, I know how important it is to get the best policy recommendations from the nation's leading policy experts, the people who know firsthand what learners need and how to provide the best quality education for them to envision their own success and competitiveness in life, truly partnering with students around what they need to succeed.
Hi, I'm Congressman Bobby Scott from Virginia's 3rd District, and I serve as the Democratic leader for the House Committee on Education and the Workforce. I'm sorry I can't join you today in person, but I want to thank Congresswoman Shelton, Grand Valley State University, and the REP4 Alliance for inviting me to be part of your first ever Hill Day. As leaders of community and state colleges, HBCUs, HSIs, and ANAPESIs, each of you has a unique appreciation for the value of a college degree, which we know is the surest pathway to economic mobility and into the middle class. Innovative strategies like the REP4 model that focus on collaborating, listening to learners, and identifying concrete solutions are among the best tools we have to help students access and complete their higher education. Your advocacy and leadership are particularly critical as students, educators, and institutions recover from the pandemic, while also navigating culture wars in education and threats to education funding. That's why I'm doing everything I can in Congress to support our nation's students. This Congress, I introduced the Lowering Obstacles to Achievement Now Act, or the LOAN Act, to reform our student loan system and help bring down the cost of college. This legislation takes critical steps that we need to expand access to the life-changing benefits of a college degree, both now and in the future. So thank you all again for everything that you do on behalf of students and institutions. We have a lot of work to do, but I'm confident that together we can fulfill the promise of higher education for all students.
What our objective is a global movement. What our objective is scaling the tools and participation level. And what our objective is sustainability. And that's going to require a different level of support in the next phase, and then a sustainable level of support in an ongoing phase. And so, anything you can do if you leave here feeling this is really important work, we need you. We need your ideas, your advocacy, your advice at how to connect with others, your direct support of a line item in the administrative budget, anything you want to do, a higher earmark, we'll take it all, and more.
I think the work that we do in this vein will ultimately advance equity in that capacity. And I know that it feels dicey these days, right? Because you can't turn on the radio or the television without being kind of immediately thrown into the culture war. But if at the end of the day, we focus on how are we helping our people? How are we helping people to become better, more productive citizens and residents who are going to give back to their communities? I think that's really key.
And I used to say all the time, our students are different now because they've grown up with a computer in their hands. Our students are different now because they've grown up with a computer in their hands, because they've gone through a global pandemic, because they're facing a kind of political and social disruption that we haven't faced in generations. And we need to learn from them, and that's why REP4 is so critical right now. Because if we're not asking them the questions, we're not going to change and get better at serving who they are right now, what they need right now. And so we have a responsibility to do that work, and we have a responsibility to keep asking them the right questions.
I think sometimes we overcomplicate concepts. This is pretty simple. It's learning how to listen. It's having empathy and understanding what this generation is going through. And it's realizing we don't have all the answers, so we need to collaborate on finding them. It's that simple. It's empowering student voice for their own support, their own development, their own wonderful, incredible journey, and to help us with our own institutional transformation.
Hopefully this will be able to expand and we'll be able to hear a lot more people.
I hope that in the future just keeps growing and getting bigger and bigger until maybe this can be in almost every college and high school around the world,
Maybe go to like countries where like education system is not that good.
Fantastic.
REP4 is change. REP4 is empowerment.
REP4 is the student's ability to create change in the education system.
It is a really good opportunity for you to see another perspective than what you already see.
You do have a voice.
Wow. That's just